The term looter shooter isn't something I had heard until very recently, but it definitely rolls off the tongue a little better than shared world FPS RPG. It's a game where the player shoots stuff and loots stuff in equal measure. The current king of the looter shooters is Bungie's Destiny. It's the game that essentially, whether you like it or not, changed the way we play many of our games. Despite how you might feel about Destiny, it exploded in popularity after it launched, resulting in many of the industry's biggest publishers to follow the trend set in motion by Activision and Bungie. Ubisoft repurposed The Division to meet this new market, and even added a Destiny-like loot progression system to the crew too. EA's answer? BioWare's Anthem, which is due out very soon. How does the new kid on the block stack up to the reigning king? First, the similarities. Destiny and Anthem both heavily rely on loot drops as the main form of progression. They both have traditional RPG leveling systems, sure, but the real mark of progress is the shiny new gun you picked up. Both games have a large focus on cooperative play. While solo play is available, it's undeniable that both games are considerably more enjoyable when paired up with some friends. Their worlds are both relatively similar, with both taking place in a distant future where the lines between technology and magic are blurred. However, once you start looking at the narratives within both games, that's when the seemingly subtle differences start making a huge difference. Anthem, despite it having a much higher focus on combat than any other BioWare game, is still a BioWare game. This is the team behind Mass Effect and Dragon Age. They have a good idea of what makes an interesting world and story, so the narrative is a lot more linear and cinematic than the one found in Destiny. Destiny 2 tried to combat the issues of the first game by featuring a more traditional sci-fi shooter story in the same vein as their Halo games, but the foundation established by the first game still leaves a lot of the lore lost to the wikis and the grimoire cards. Anthem won't have the branching paths and big decision-making found in some of their previous games, but BioWare is still making an effort to allow for some player input in the world of Anthem, even if it is a bit inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. The differences between Bungie's and BioWare styles are apparent in the gameplay itself, too. Despite both having class-based shooter gameplay with abilities and ultimates, Bungie is the studio that made Halo. They make first-person shooters. BioWare made Mass Effect. Third-person shooters are their forte. Even though, at the end of the day, you're still pumping lead into giant enemies with never-ending health bars, whether or not you can see your character with all its visual upgrades can be a deal breaker for some people. Anthem has a substantially more involved customization system. You can pick what color you want for each part of your Javelin, complete with universal liveries and alternate designs. Destiny's visual customization is a little more diverse due to all the different types of armor for each class, but being able to customize your color schemes at will instead of needing shaders is something many may prefer. Now for the big trade-offs. The biggest, in my opinion, being the lack of PvP multiplayer in Anthem. Destiny's competitive multiplayer has always been a reliable foundation, offering old-school map design with enough space to utilize your class's abilities and your legendary weapons. Anthem has none of this, so its longevity might be a concern to those who prefer fighting real people over the internet rather than giant scorpion monsters. So, what does Anthem have that Destiny doesn't? It all boils down to the Javelins. Javelins are essentially Iron Man suits, each one essentially being a different class. There's the all-rounder, the tank, the mage, and the rogue. Each one performs significantly different from one another, but the nice thing is that jumping into a new Javelin doesn't reset any progress. You're still the same character, just in a new suit. And for the record, that Iron Man reference wasn't just an oversimplification of Anthem's class system. Flying through the world of Anthem really does evoke the feeling of what it would be like to be Iron Man. It's something that really has to be felt in order to be understood. If nothing else, Anthem is worth playing just for the simple joy of flying around in a Javelin. I also think people who feel scorned by Destiny's inconsistent RNG loot will find solace in Anthem's more consistent progression, which is the minor difference that might make Anthem the looter shooter of choice for critics and players alike. Instead of being stuck with the same loadout for a while until you get lucky and get a huge drop, Anthem drips out consistently better weapons and gear with each mission. They might not be the huge, hype-inducing shots of dopamine from Destiny, but it does help curb the frustration of not getting anything useful for a long stretch of time. What it all comes down to, though, is preference, as it does anytime you compare two games. Do you prefer first-person shooters with a solid balance between PvE and PvP? Destiny's the choice for you. Do you prefer third-person shooters with a focus on narrative and PvE? Anthem, no question. There are some things Destiny does better than Anthem, and some things Anthem does better than Destiny. Anthem is fighting an uphill battle though, and I'm not entirely sure that both games can coexist peacefully, but I hope this video helped make a decision a little easier to make. Thanks for watching.